And a good Wednesday afternoon to you. This is Cards Hub 365, powered by Gray Bar here on Sports Hub STL. I'm Joe Roderick, joined alongside by Brenden Schaeffer. Cardinals lose to the Yankees today, 7-0. And where there are notes, I guess, and things to go over with the game and certain things to talk about, Brenden, Nolan Arenado was in the starting lineup for a game in Tampa, Florida. When you saw that posted today, what was your level of surprise when you saw that he made the trip to the other side?
You know, I wasn't like shocked, but at least mild surprise, because that is a bit of a trek to the other side of the state. And usually when you see these little mini trips to the Gulf side, you might not necessarily see that many veterans involved in the trip. And for Arenado to say, nope, this is a game I want to play in. I don't want to have consecutive days off. I want to kind of be able to stay in that rhythm, even if it means a little bit of a road trip. I thought that was notable. I don't think we have to go too crazy with it, but I thought that was kind of cool to see that, yeah, you know, he's getting the work in because he's serious, as he's told us, about having a better season and being a better baseball player this year. And look, since he's on the St. Louis Cardinals, the Cardinals are the team that's going to benefit from that mindset from Nolan.
Do you think how cynical do we want to be with this? The Yankees are one of those teams that we feel like would be in the market for a guy like a Nolan Arenado. Is it maybe a showcase of sorts? Is it him saying, hey guys, look, you could have this. This could be every day for you. If you make that trade for me, here I am. Like, I can stay with, I don't have to go back with the team.
Yeah, 0 for 3 with 2 Ks, though. So if that was the take, it kind of backfired, right? No, that would be bold to say, hey, I'm going to go over there and put on a show so they have to trade for me. I think that's kind of veering into galaxy brain thinking. And like I said, he didn't have a great day. So if that was the plan, it didn't work. No, I think it's fun to kind of try to connect dots like that. But if I had to guess, I'll take this one at face value, that as you get into the rhythm, trying to prepare for the season, it was kind of his scheduled day to play, and he lobbied to be part of it and said, I want to be there. I want to be in the lineup. And so I don't necessarily put too much stock into the fact that it's the Yankees they were playing. Maybe he just really wanted to be able to say hi to Goldie since Goldschmidt's on the Yankees now. I don't know. I don't really think this was like the galaxy brain ploy to get the Yankees to go, oh, we got to have him, because I just don't know that there has been that level of interest where, you know, maybe if there had been some rumblings and you thought there might be some interest recently and he wants to try to put that over the top, but I'm not exactly sure that's what we had at his disposal today.
So you think he did not pack for more than one day?
I don't. No, that would have been bold. Is all his belongings that are down there in Jupiter just say, I'm pack the U-Haul. I don't need to come back to the Jupiter side of the state of Florida after this game. I'm going to put on a show. It's fun to think about.
Why do you got the big suitcase? It's just one
one night, bro. It's down and back. We're not even gonna. What are you doing? No, I don't think that was it. But it is kind of a funny thought to kind of go there in hypotheticals.
Yeah, and just as a whole, the whole West Coast trip for the Cardinals these past 2 days. It was ugly. It was ugly all around, and that's that's not a good sign. With yesterday, Victor Scott being the only one that gets your 2 hits yesterday, and today Tink Hence kind of getting lit up a little bit. Not the road trip that you'd want to make.
No, I mean, look, you can take individual performances away from the last couple of days that are positive. Certainly yesterday, you mentioned Victor. You want to see more of him to kind of see what he's able to do and if he's able to take that center field job and run away with it. Quinn Matthews was impressive yesterday, and today Michael McGreevy was good. But, yeah, I think the overall sentiment of, hey, this is a team that in 2025 needs to score more runs, and you kind of get off to this little bit of a sluggish go to spring training offensively. I've already gotten questions from fans like, should we start to worry that you can go down the list and list the number of guys that are supposed to be mainstay players in this lineup that are off to really sluggish starts at the plate? I'm going to go ahead and say blanket rule no for me as far as like my concern level for individual players that are struggling right now. Let's get a couple more weeks into this thing where the season is within reach. We're still a month or more away from opening day. I'm gonna be okay with it for the time being, regardless of results. But I will take away some positives when the pitchers do well. I think that's kind of notable for guys like Quinn Matthews yesterday, like McGreevy today. Tink Hence, that's one you wanna flush it and forget it. You kind of want to do the same with Sem Robertson the other day. But yeah, the results are kind of gross early on, and you'd like to see fewer strikeouts and maybe these guys get going offensively a little bit sooner rather than later. But it's not panic time for me just yet.
Yeah, it's fun to kind of look at certain things. The White Sox still haven't won a spring training game, and it's kind of it's funny to poke at that a little bit after the season they had in 24. But I would also imagine that an organization like that, they're not sitting there grinding for that first win in the Cactus League right now. They probably don't care. It's a bad look, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not something that they went in there saying, we need to be undefeated. We need to be over 500 in spring. It's just, we're a week into this right now. It's not as big of a deal, I think, as a lot of people want to make it. Yeah, you're going to look at something like Tink Hence and be like, ooh, maybe that cost him a little bit. I don't know. And as far as where his depth was with the team, he probably wasn't making the opening day roster anyway. So it's one of those where you look at it and you can, okay, it's bad. Yeah, Tink Hence might be a Memphis or Springfield guy. By the time the season starts, he's not ready for St. Louis. Okay.
And that was probably the case anyway with Tink, right? Like, I don't think we were penciling him into St. Louis even for arguably the first half of the year unless he really shined, because he's going to get some time at AAA. He's got to build up his innings, I think, more so than anything else. And so that's why you see today struggles in an inning. He comes back out for another one just to get pitch count, right? That's the same thing that we were talking about over the weekend or whenever that was with Sem Robertson when he got lit up in Jupiter. It's not something that I think you panic about, and you just have to kind of take some of these things as they come. But you can also choose to highlight some of the more positive things, because when a Quinn Matthews goes out and strikes out Vlad Guerrero yesterday, you notice that. When Michael McGreevy, another guy that's kind of right there on the cusp of a rotation spot, goes out and pitches well today over a couple of innings, you notice that. And so those are the guys where you go, okay, not trying to get too high or too low. When it's going poorly, you don't get too low. When it's going well this early, don't get too high about it, but notice that and say, okay, let's watch Michael McGreevy next time as they build him up to 3 innings and 4 innings and beyond. Does it continue to look just as good? Because if so, then you might actually have something actionable for the Cardinals to say, hey, this guy, we have to move some pieces around if necessary, but he needs to be in that opening day rotation. Like, I think you'll start to maybe over the next week be able to ramp up some of those conversations where you did it once, you did it twice. Now we're building you up. Can you go out and do it more so that we can decide whether or not this is meaningful for the way we make out our roster coming up?
Your thoughts are welcome in the YouTube chat as Jeff chimes in, wishing us a good afternoon. Let us know your thoughts on what we have seen from the game today as we continue on here on Cards Hub 365, powered by Gray Bar. And if you're still suffering from supply chain issues and they're disrupting your operations, have no fear, because Gray Bar has you covered, and you can rely on their nationwide logistics network to get what you need, where they need, when they need to be there, all within budget. Gray Bar, a trusted and leading North American distributor of electrical communications, data networking, and industrial products. Gray Bar literally supports products of any industry: construction, hospitals, industrial plants, schooling. It doesn't matter. Just one clear mission: to serve as that vital link in the supply chain, adding value for customers and suppliers with innovative solutions and services. Visit graybar.com to start an order today. That's graybar.com, and fix those supply chain issues with Gray Bar, your distributor for electrical and datacom needs. I would be interested to know from people that watch this, as you get comments like this from Jack saying this team stinks.
Yeah.
We're 5 games in. For the folks that actually will sit and they watch these spring training games and they watch them, is it because you are trying to determine what your expectation levels are for this team, or is it because it's baseball that's on at noon in February and it gives you something to watch? Is it that? Are you betting on it? Because that's a whole different conversation.
Spring training games. There you go. That's when you're getting into the mix. Oh boy.
But I would love to know what, like, when you are watching a spring training game, like what you're expecting to get out of it, or if it is just a guilty pleasure that's, hey, it's February, there's baseball on TV, I'm watching it. I don't care what today 7-0. Do you really care about that, or the fact that you got to watch 9 innings of baseball, is that enough for you? Is it the equivalent of, going and watching your nephew play a high school varsity game, something like that, to where it's on and you're going to watch it? I would love to know, what that thought process is when you're going into it. Like, how invested are you at this point in spring training?
I would hope people aren't invested in the win-loss results, like to the extent that it's ruining your day because the Cardinals lose the spring game to the Yankees. Like, I think when you get into the season, I am far from the person who is going to tell you that you shouldn't let the outcome of Cardinals games ruin your day. Just ask anybody how I feel about Mizzou games, and they'll be able to tell you really quickly it impacts my day. Just ask my wife. But a spring game, I would think, would be a little bit different. So what are we watching for? We're watching for, hey, how does McGreevy look? Because he's coming up next, right? Like, yes, you'd like to see some of the veteran guys be able to make an impact and say, hey, coming into the season, you know what? Wilson Contreras, he packed on some muscle. He's really swinging it well. I'm excited for what he could potentially do as a first baseman. I think you're almost looking for the storylines, Joe, when you're watching these games right now and thinking individual performance-wise, who's kind of ramping up and gearing toward the season in a way that makes you think, hey, if that guy kind of locks in, maybe we could really have something here. You're kind of looking for that. And it's probably, in fairness, pretty disappointing when you see 12 strikeouts today by the offense and only 3 hits coming on the heels of a day yesterday where Victor Scott was basically the entire offense. But I don't know. I would like to think Cardinals fans find it easier in February to look at a game like today or like yesterday, and rather than, oh boy, this offense stinks and they might not be able to score. Maybe that's true, but like, we've got all summer to kind of lament about that. You might look at it and go, how about Quinn Matthews? What if Victor Scott is ready for center field? And today my takeaways were McGreevy, and another one that we haven't said his name yet, Joe. Riley O'Brien is starting to look like a guy again where we saw him last spring and he was really solid. He struck out Ohtani in the first game of the MLB season, and then we didn't see him for much of the year because of injury. He had another good outing today, gave up a couple of hits, but had 2 strikeouts and is pushing 99, 100 miles per hour on some of his pitches. Would love to see him be able to have a healthy summer and see what he might be able to do in the bullpen. Speak for myself, maybe. Those are the kinds of things I'm looking at right now going, who stands out to kind of, as we piece this roster together in our minds, say, hey, this guy could potentially be a 7th, 8th inning guy. Like, those are the conversations that I think are appropriate for February. But like I said, I'm not going to tell you how to fan, because I get it. Some people just live and die with the Cardinals, and that might be the case in October. It also might be the case in late February. I can't blame you. That's true.
Yeah, Henry chiming in here saying he's defending this 12-25. He said, if you're saying the season's over in February, he's sorry for you. He's a diehard fan. This team has a chance to compete for a playoff spot. I don't. There are not a whole lot of people that are going to look at this team and say it's a playoff team. But I think if you also look at the fact that 40% of MLB teams are making the playoffs now with the new playoff structure. Okay, if this is a team that you could, that you think could sneak its way to 86 wins, then yeah, we'll be sitting there in September looking at the schedule and saying, okay, here's what they need to do to get into the playoffs. It's that simple, but it's a matter of, how you start and not falling into those long losing streaks that we've seen the last couple of years.
Yeah, and it's and I like the comment that Rena put on there about individual performances first, definitely not stressing about wins and losses in spring, because that time will come for that. And maybe some of the things that we see in spring can inform your prediction on how many games the team is going to win this year. But as far as just thinking about whether or not they close out of like yesterday, 3-2 was the score of the loss. I don't think I would feel any differently about a 4-3 win as I would a 3-2 loss. It's just what it is, and you got to get the reps in a little bit. But it is kind of interesting to wonder about, well, what could this season be? Because it's been an off season of basically giving you every reason to have reduced expectations, whether it's the payroll, whether it's the fact that they didn't go out and add any new faces legitimately to think, okay, this was an area that last year you lagged behind, so we're going to put this new addition into that spot, and suddenly you've got something. It's relying on a lot of guys that last year, I think, the Cardinals, when they were trying to win games last year, didn't necessarily want to go all in on these particular players because they thought they weren't ready for that. And now they're saying, hey, we're going all in on these particular players because we have to find out at a certain point. And if that's not the most energizing sort of mantra to have as a fan base to hear, then I could be understanding of that. But there are those who would go and say, hey, there are still a lot of guys aged 22 to 26, 27 on this roster. Maybe if any of them or half of them or some of them take a step forward, the Cardinals end up being more interesting than we think, at least right now when we're watching them strike out 12 times and not score against the Yankees.
We have another one. This could be Ben chimes in. It's on and I can have it on in the background. I do want to see the young kids play and develop. And I would imagine a lot of people right now, that's why you're watching Cardinal game. You know that it is a youth movement. You know it's a reset year, and you want to see what these kids have. You want to see what the front office is talking about when they bring up the fact that that the young kids are going to play, and they let they let some of the veterans walk after last year, whether that be Goldie or Gibson or Lynn. You didn't bring them back because you wanted to see what this would look like in 2025 and beyond. So yeah, that's this year of all years. I think that is one of the reasons to watch the spring training games.
And Eric Sontag says he agrees with that and is just wondering, which players flash in spring, show promise for the season coming up. To that point, Joe, I think Michael McGreevy does qualify. Like, he's been really steady, and we get a glimpse of him today with a couple of good innings. What do you need to see from Michael McGreevy for you to be banging the table come late March that, like, find a way to get him in the rotation at whoever's expense that needs to be? Can be a conversation at that point. But what do you want to see from him? Or have you basically seen what you need to see and you're thinking the Cardinals need to start making considerations for end of March comes and there's no injuries to that rotation? Something's got to move, because if you're going to be about development and be about a transition year, you have to make sure you're giving opportunities to guys who perform like this in spring. Just one game today, but I think McGreevy has been trending in this direction since late last summer when he got some opportunities at the big league level.
And that's, the McGreevy factor is one of the reasons I think we saw Derek's article the other day, the rumors of possibly trading Eric Fetty before opening day. And one of the reasons they pointed out was they wanted to see what would, Michael McGreevy in that top five in that rotation, and who would be the easiest to move. It would probably be a guy like Fetty.
He'd be the easiest to move if you're trying to get something back. I also don't think, though, that right now is the time to maximize the return on Eric Fetty. I am firmly in the camp of I would not trade Eric Fetty right now. I would be disappointed if the Cardinals.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
And I don't know if that's the most popular take, because people hear me say that and they're like, well, I'm worried about McGreevy not having a spot. I'm worried about Quinn Matthews not having a spot. I think those guys will end up with a spot, even if it's not on opening day, 6 weeks into the season. If their performance is dictated, I'm not worried about those guys being left in AAA to rot, because I honestly, having covered the Cardinals since 2016, there's never been a year where there wasn't a spring training injury to a starter. Maybe this is the first time that happens. And if so, you kind of baby that along in the month of April to figure out, okay, how long can we go with some of these guys like Michaelis and Matz? If those guys aren't really performing, they're on the final years of contracts too. Fetty is one that he didn't pitch poorly for the Cardinals when he got here last year. He had a 3.72 ERA, which was worse than what he had with the White Sox, but still pretty formidable. I would look at Eric Fetty and say, what if he gets comfortable in his environment here and pitches closer to what he did the first half of last year? And then you talk about come June or so, maybe the Cardinals are 5 games under and they're clarifying their position. They're not going to be a contender this year, even though they hope they can. Maybe they realize it. I think you get more for Eric Fetty in a few months than you do right now, even if you're looking to go down that road. And I also think he's pretty good to where, like, if you're going to make a move, and they won't do this, but I would almost rather you be more willing to eat some money to move somebody like Steven Matz than say, well, let's trade Fetty because his money is going to be the easiest to move. I'm not convinced you're getting a top prospect back for Fetty if you do it during spring, unless some other teams around the league have so many injuries that they get desperate. But usually desperation is what you can prey on come July, not necessarily February and March.
So if you watch the game today, Brenden, and I'm throwing this up there because it was talked about in the game, and I know you were watching it. There was no local radio feed. There was no local TV feed. So you had to watch the Yes Network feed for it. And during his first at bat, the announcers were talking about Jordan Walker. And I see Robert here chiming in that he liked when they talked about the Cardinals, how they messed up Jordan Walker. I also think if you listen to it as a whole and you listen to a lot of the Yankees broadcast side of things, there seemed to be a lot that they weren't totally up to date on when it came to the Cardinals organization that they were talking about. And it didn't seem like they were that well connected to what's going on over in Jupiter.
I'm sure those guys do a lovely job. I'm going to be transparent. I put the broadcast on mute. Like, I just didn't really care to listen to it. I was watching the game, but I wasn't listening to it. So
I listened to more than I watched today. So
Really?
I was sitting in the studio and I had the game on and I was listening to it. So we watched it in completely opposite ways.
We did combine our two powers, and we really had a great viewing experience today.
It's making for a hell of a show right now.
Yeah. But let me ask though, like, did you hear the specific Walker commentary? And because this is something that's been common throughout the league. It's become very popular to have the Cardinals be the punching bag because something gets out there on Twitter and you kind of, let's say you're a national guy or you cover another team like these guys with the Yankees, and you're not locked in on Jupiter. Like you said, you're not locked in on the St. Louis Cardinals year round like we are locally. And you see some of that stuff out there. Maybe it comes on your feed and you see it from a name that you know, and you're like, well, that's interesting. But that just sort of reinforces in your mind your belief of what the Cardinals have done wrong. And then when you have a broadcast and you have a 30-second window of opportunity to talk about this player, what comes to your mind first? I'm not saying they don't prepare for these games, but I think it's kind of the easy punching bag move to say, oh, the Cardinals have ruined Jordan Walker. Honestly, and I was on the show this morning with Randy and Brooke, and before I came on, we didn't get a chance to debate this back and forth, but they were talking about a preference to have Jordan Walker play first base. Like, why didn't the Cardinals do that? They're kind of catering toward Contreras and giving him the easier position. I actually would have disagreed with that because I think if you try to move Walker again right now to a third different position in a handful of years, you're doing him a disservice as he tries to figure things out at the plate. So I think it could honestly be worse where everybody clamors, said, oh, Jordan Walker can't hack it in the outfield. He needs to move to the infield again. I don't think that would be fair to the kid as he's trying to really come into his own offensively. So the Cardinals just said, look, we're sticking him in right field. If that goes poorly, maybe it's the DH pipeline. We'll see. But at this point, I think they're just putting Jordan Walker in the best position to be able to do what he can do at the plate. They've got a new hitting coach. You can say the last regime, messed him up. I think some of the things that they were trying to do just aren't realistic necessarily for a kid 20, 21, 22 years old to think that he's going to have the grown man power of a 28 to 30-year-old player. It's something that tends to come with time with line drive hitters. So, yeah, have they been a little nitpicky in certain regards over the years with Jordan Walker? Sure. I'm not saying they've been perfect, but I think it's also kind of the easy punching bag thing to pile on the Cardinals right now. I have seen it from a national perspective from guys that I know are trustworthy and know what they're talking about more often than not. It kind of feels just like the easy thing to do now is like, well, the Cardinals, they're screwing everything up. I feel like it's become almost this self-fulfilling prophecy where when I look at this year's team, I really do see a lane for them to have success. And nationally, if you hear people talk about the Cardinals right now, it's like the Busch Stadium is a barren hole in the ground, the way that some people around the league are talking about the team. And I don't really quite see it that way, but obviously some fans are frustrated too. And that's something that's been built over the course of years. So I understand that as well.
It was top of the first inning when they brought it up. So we're talking 3 hours ago when this was discussed, but they brought up the fact that last year he played 51 games and they talked about constantly screwing with his swing. And now it's all messed up is the way that they kind of, they laid it out there.
I mean, look, they did ask him to hit more fly balls. They did at points send him back to the minor leagues to work on lifting the ball. And I do think that the way they went about that could have been more effective, could have been better communicated, could have resulted in better outcomes to where at a certain point, I think where they're at now with it is let you be you, right? We tried to force some things that I think if they would have been a little more patient would have come naturally. But I also think some of those issues, Joe, with Walker, and it's not just last year, but the first year when they brought him up, he was pretty fresh to playing the outfield. And when they sent him down, it was immediately following a couple of games in San Francisco where Oliver Marmol didn't put him in the lineup in that spacious outfield that the Giants play at Oracle Park because they're trying to win ball games, and this develop on the fly when there are high expectations in St. Louis wasn't maybe the fairest of positions to put Walker into. So they were kind of balancing the defensive and the offensive aspects for him. And then more last year it was, he's got to lift the ball. But like when you looked at his numbers in St. Louis, he wasn't having success. So to kind of paint it as well, the Cardinals have just done everything wrong at every turn, I think is a little too harsh. But I also look at it and say, if you're still living in that realm where you feel like the Cardinals have ruined this player, that's not really how I see it, because I think Walker's going to have a good year. And everything we've heard this offseason, going all the way back to winter warmup and watching the way that kid lit up the room with his enthusiasm for where his swing was and how he's kind of back to being himself, I don't think this is still an ongoing problem, at least in my opinion. I feel like if the Cardinals had made missteps, that there are other people now that are involved and are kind of realizing, hey, those that were here before, or those that were participatory in kind of sending Walker down this path where we asked more of him than he reasonably should have been able to deliver at the time, we've changed those expectations. We've changed our communication. And I think they're in a spot now where he is going to be in a spot to just go out and play and be himself, play baseball. And we'll see if the Cardinals are able to reap the benefits of that. But yeah, I'm not too surprised that was a conversation top of the first inning. You see Walker coming up. Yeah, the Cardinals have really screwed that guy up. Like, that's just been the popular trope, I think.
There was also the comment too, Mason Wynn, 11 steals. Oh, a lot of speed there. And it's like, I don't feel like in today's baseball, 11 steals doesn't translate to a lot of speed. Like Mason Wynn's fast,
that, but yeah,
he's fast. But if you're gonna hype him up like that, I'd like to see more than 11 bags stolen on the year. I've been guilty, and I also have vouched for Walker having that move to first base. And I think what makes that attractive is the fact that he was drafted as a third baseman. So, he has the infield experience and just the fact that it's such a big target over there as far as first base would go.
Jose Martinez was a big target at first base.
But I do think with the amount of work that they have put in now over the years with him in the outfield, having him work with the instructors, having him work with Willie McGee, John Jay, and having him go from left field to right field now from the minors to Busch Stadium, there has just been so much time invested in him becoming that outfielder. And I'm sure that Brenden, maybe you have some, the memories of plays at the top of your mind, but I'm just trying to think. There are not, that Marcelo Zuna climbing the fence and then falling on his face, like that has not happened to Jordan Walker in the outfield. I think we have seen him make some really nice plays in right field. There is nothing that he has done in right field that you look at it, God, just, make this guy into a DH and be done with it.
His judgment of some certain fly balls over the course of time were problematic, and that's something that he's improving upon. I think that the way outfield coaching is going to be better this year than it's been in some number of years. Should have seen some of the drills too that they had these outfielders doing before one of the Grapefruit League games over the weekend while I was there. I took some brief video of it, but it was like they were almost like defensive backs or wide receivers running routes and just having coaches toss little, I don't know if it was bottle caps or what it ended up being, little tiny balls that they're like, it's quick explosiveness, responsiveness, just those sorts of drills that they're really doing that weren't really something we saw in the past with the outfield group. I think John Jay is leading the charge, doing a really nice job there. Brian has a couple of comments, I think, misunderstanding what my comparison was regarding Jose Martinez. I didn't compare Jose Martinez to Jordan Walker in terms of athleticism. Joe said big target at first. And if that's what we're going with, Jose Martinez was a big target at first, couldn't do it defensively. Jordan Walker is a better athlete than Jose Martinez. Absolutely. Do I think Jordan Walker we could just make that 1 + 1 = 2 and he'd be a great first baseman? No, I don't think Jordan Walker should be a first baseman. I don't think it's a great idea, especially right now, considering as Joe mentioned, you've invested this in time over the course of years into him being an outfielder. Let this play out in 2025. That's what 2025 can be about, with whether you call it reduced expectations or transition year. Play him in the outfield, and this will be kind of the telling tale of whether or not it's going to work. But you'd be wasting that throwing arm, first of all, at first base. And I just don't think there's any reason to think, oh, yeah, he'll just acclimate to it great, while being able to continue progressing as a hitter, which is, frankly, the most important part of Jordan Walker. You're not bringing Jordan Walker along for the next decade because you hope he wins 5 Gold Gloves. You hope he wins some Silver Sluggers. You hope he's an all-star candidate because of his bat. And to try and change his positions for a third time in, 4 years, I do not think that would be something I would be in favor of, and I credit the Cardinals for resisting that temptation if it was potentially there. They have invested time, Brian. He's 22, yet it's been what, since 2023? Was that the deadline where Bader was dealt? Trying to think back to when that was. If it was 22, when Bader was dealt for Montgomery, was the deadline at 22. So he's been an outfielder since that.
21
August.
Was that?
I think it was 22.
Okay, 22. Okay, yeah, that was
Because
when they. Yeah.
Montgomery was here for that playoff.
Montgomery and Quintana, yeah, they started your 2 playoff games in Alberts last year. Yes.
And Montgomery then didn't end up with the Cardinals for all of 23. They traded him out. I think that down the road you could make that decision if you wanted to, but I think they need to see this out in 2025, because if you think back to like September, there was conversation about Walker's defense that was like, he's just a future DH. Like, I don't think they can do it. The Cardinals are saying, we're going to give this one more year because he is athletic. He's not a Jose Martinez in terms of athleticism. Maybe we just need to give this guy a year without being very nitpicky about telling him what to do and what to change about his career, whether it's at the plate or in the field. If you think about it, Joe, each of the last 3 years, it's been either change your swing or change positions, or, it's been something of that ilk. This is the year of, and I think the Cardinals are committed to doing this, Jordan Walker, go play baseball. And then we will see where the chips fall on that. I hope it's something that can be productive for him, because he's the kind of guy you absolutely want to root for. But I think it's the right decision not to go, hey, you know what we really need to do? Change his position again after spending the last couple of years making him into an outfielder. Yeah, let's let this play out this year. I think that's reasonable.
Before we get out of here, Brendan, do we know who's starting tomorrow for the Cardinals?
No idea.
Okay, I hadn't seen it either. I didn't know if you had saw that as well.
I'm still recovering from yesterday, getting back to St. Louis. I can try to look it up though real quick.
But yeah, Ryan Fernandez today. McGreevy goes 2 innings, 21 pitches. You love to see that. That's how he just made quick work of his time out there. Ryan Fernandez, another one, 16 pitches today, 3 strikeouts in his outing. That is, if you are looking for bright spots out of this game, 12 strikeouts. Yeah, that's terrible. That's not good. Not what you want to see. But when you look at some of the pitchers, you mentioned O'Brien out there. Those are bright spots. Those are highlights of things that you can build off of, and guys that you expect. O'Brien and Fernandez, those are guys that you think right now are 100% locks in the bullpen for 2025 on opening day.
I do. If both are healthy, I would put both Fernandez and O'Brien in that bullpen, because I think they've both got the potential to be late inning guys that could be 7th, 8th inning, leading as the bridge into Ryan Helsley as you're trying to replicate and replace the production of Andrew Kittredge from last year. I think those are 2 candidates that have the stuff and the makeup to be able to do it in both of their cases, really more so with O'Brien, but it's always true of any pitcher. Got to stay healthy to be able to realize that potential. But I think with last year's bullpen being one of the top strengths of the team and having a little bit of attrition there and guys that go to free agency, what we're seeing from some of these right-handers so far in camp, and it's still early, but some of the signs we've seen, I think, give you some belief that, you know what, they could end up maybe having another strong bullpen year as well. And then you start to think about the left side, like guys like John King and Liberatore, if they're slotting in alongside Romero, like this bullpen could be a little deeper than at first blush when you consider the fact that they didn't add anybody in the offseason other than like a Nick Anderson on a minor league deal. We'll see. Like, that's something I will monitor as well throughout the rest of camp as to the guys that we're looking for the bullpen opportunity. And Brian mentions Matz has looked good. Like, if the pitching staff ends up maybe being a pleasant surprise in spring, could that lead into some momentum as the offense tries to catch up and find its bearings to help the Cardinals maybe be in a spot coming into the season that, hey, as long as they can get to, 4 runs a game or so, you might have a pitching staff that can keep you in more games than you'd expect with the way that this team is constructed.
Brian chimes in asking, has everyone given up on Liberatore being a starter? No, Liberatore is going to start games in the spring. They are going to stretch him out.
Yep.
More than likely, though, if he's on the team opening day, it's going to be out of the bullpen. And the only way he's not on the team opening day would be if he's in Memphis as a starter, if they like what they see and they're going to give him another run at that. But he was so valuable as a relief pitcher last year. They're going to continue to try to get what they can out of him. And if he's that reliable arm coming out of the left-hand side that can either come in and get that 1 out, or he can give you those 3 innings and stretch it to that 8th, 9th, they're going to do what is going to help this team the most when it comes to Matthew Liberatore.
And everybody that's in camp right now, everybody and their brother is being stretched out as a starter. It doesn't mean they're all going to start by the time you get to the end of March. It's just easier to take a guy and scale it down compared to, oh, shoot, we don't have enough starters built up. We need to ask you to change midstream. That's kind of what they did with Zach Thompson at one point in the previous year, and it doesn't necessarily bode well. So I've always been of the camp that if Libby can start, he should be a starter, because a starter will always be more valuable than a reliever, no matter what the role. A good number 2, number 3 in a major league rotation is going to be more valuable than any closer in baseball. It's just the way that it is. So yeah, I'm not giving up on Libby in that role. I just am counting to 5 and I'm counting to 6. If you count Quinn Matthews, I'm counting to 7. And I see that, barring some injuries or some trades, I don't know that he's going to be first up on the depth chart to come into that situation. But you never know. I mean, I could make you 5 or 6 or 10 different machinations of how he could be a starter, but it involves some hypotheticals that we just don't know the answers to all these questions just yet.
I think Graham chiming in, it'd be cool to see a full season of Matt's healthy. Yeah, I think Mo would also agree with you on that. And so would the Cardinals management, front office, everybody would have loved to have seen, would love to see one full healthy season out of the 4 that they signed him for. That's at some point. Yes, I think that kind of goes without saying. So, well, we will. Yeah, again, I mean, it's going to continue to play out over the next few weeks. And as you mentioned, I mean, everybody right now is healthy. It's not the Mets situation where they are already 2 arms down in their bullpen. So that's a pro right now. Haven't had anybody really shut down yet. Haven't had anybody needed a day off that we have heard of so far. So far we're 1 week into games and 2 weeks into practices, and things health wise are good.
Knock on the nearest wood that you can find, though. I don't know what that desk is made of there, but because the injuries,
they said it was, yeah.
When the injury bug starts to hit, it can be merciless. But you're right. Like, for now, all these questions about, well, you got 7 pitchers, you want them all in the rotation. Wait a couple weeks, and if that changes, I think it can be something that kind of resolves itself naturally. And if not, good problem to have. That's sort of the attitude that I would take into it.
Things seem to things seem to work their way out. That's how baseball go. So we will
pretty much, yeah.
It'll be you and Claves tomorrow on Cards Hub 365. And once that is over with, once people are done watching that after the game, hopefully everybody heads on over to Hot Shots off of Lindbergh in Lime. That is where we are going to be having our big kickoff party on Thursday night over at the Hot Shots Lindbergh in Lime. Come meet the team and enjoy great food and drink specials. The party starts at 6 as the Blues game starts against Washington and Ovechkin. We'll watch the game together. We'll have great prize giveaways, and the Blues Hub post-game show will broadcast live after the game. And 2 lucky Blues fans that night and a few of their friends will win the very first Sports Hub STL St. Louis sports experience, which will include watching a Blues road game at a private party with Blues alum, along with the Sports Hub STL staff and more. And if you want a chance to win, you got to be there tomorrow night at the Sports Hub STL kickoff party, Thursday night at the new Hot Shots on Lindbergh in Lime. Hot Shots, St. Louis's home for all the games, all the time since 1990. Find yours at hotshotsnet.com. Brenden, now that you are back here in St. Louis, anything that you are working on currently for sportshubstl.com that we should be looking for, or any ideas that you're going to start percolating and typing out in the next day or two? You muted yourself there, Brenden.
I muted myself. We'll get back to writing about some of these standout performers. I think finding some of the young guys to kind of key in on and how they do the second time around, right? You can do it once. Can you do it again? Those will be some of the focuses of the articles coming up. And, anything newsworthy that I need to drop an opinion column on, that's what you could find from me coming up over the next month at sportshubstl.com.
Looking forward to you and Claves on tomorrow. Tomorrow morning, it'll be Randy and Brooke again at 10 a.m. If you missed any of this show, you can go back and you can watch it on YouTube. Also, later on this afternoon, it'll be available for you wherever you find your podcasts. Just search for Cards Hub and find all of the shows that we have done. Go back and listen to some of the other ones that we have done since we launched last Monday here on Sports Hub STL. Until then, he is Brenden Schaeffer. I'm Joe Roderick. Until next time, this has been Cards Hub 365, powered by Gray Bar here on Sports Hub STL.